Ouidah, historically also called Ouidah, ʻhwaɪdə, Juda, by the French and Ajudá by the Portuguese, formerly the Kingdom of Whydah, is a city on the coast of the Republic of Benin. The commune covers an area of 364 square kilometers and is of 2002 had a population of 76,555 people. History. In local tradition, Capes is supposed to have founded the town. This probably happened towards the end of the 16th century. The town was originally known as Gleke, literally farmhouse, and was part of the Kingdom of Whydah. Whydah troops pushed their way into the African interior, capturing millions of people through tribal wars, and selling them to the Europeans and Arabs. By 1716, when the massive English slave ship Ouidah galley arrived to purchase 500 slaves from King Hafon to sell in Jamaica, the Kingdom of Whydah had become the second largest slave port in the triangular trade. The kingdom was ruled by King Hafon, who received his coronation crown as a gift from Portugal, until in 1727, the Kingdom of Whydah was captured by the forces of King Agahar of Dahomey. On the 19th of March 1727, the Boston newsletter gave this horrific report. ʻhwaɪdə in Africa. The beginning of this month, Agahar, the king of Dahomey, came down unexpectedly with an army, and soon became master of this place, and the country adjacent. The defoliation which ensued was so great that it is impossible to be represented. The factory at Sabre, once the king's town and seat of trade, was burned to the ground, and in it a great quantity of merchandise. 40 Europeans were carried into captivity to the king of Dahomey's camp at Ouidah, but after having been detained about 14 days, 7 of them were released on, and now returning hither, they gave a melancholy account of the treatment. This country, which was the pleasantest in all these parts, is now laid waste by fire and sword, and made a wilderness. The land which constituted the Kingdom of Whydah became a mere city in the new Kingdom of Dahomey. The Portuguese, English, Dutch and French all constructed forts in the city to protect their interests in slaving. The Portuguese had reached the town which they called Juda in 1580, and the Portuguese fort of São João Baptista de Juda, now housing the Whydah Museum, dates from 1721 and remained with Portugal until the 31st of July 1961. Fort of São João Baptista de Juda. The Fort of São João Baptista de Juda is a small fortress built by the Portuguese in Ouidah on the coast of Dahomey, reached by the Portuguese in 1580, after which it grew around the slave trade, for which the slave coast was already renowned. In 1680, the Portuguese governor of São Tomé and Príncipe was authorized to erect a fort. In 1721, after having been abandoned for some years, it was reconstructed and named São João Baptista de Juda. The fort, built on land given to Portugal by King Hafon of Ouidah, remained under Portuguese control from 1721 until 1961. The fort had an important impact in Benin, greatly contributing to both the Portuguese and African slave trade. Its importance is attested by the fact that the Portuguese language was the only foreign language that the kings of Dahomey authorized. Portuguese descendants were also important in the political structure of the kingdom, and some established Portuguese Brazilian families, such as the de Souza, whose descendants still exist in Benin, Togo and Ghana, were powerful and abided by private law. In January 1722, the pirate Bartholomew Roberts sailed into the harbor and captured all the 11 ships at anchor there. Following the abolition of the legal slave trade in 1807, the fort, which had before been one of the major slave ports, gradually lost its importance, and although Portugal continued to claim it as one of its possessions, formal occupation and administration were abandoned on several occasions. It was only when French presence in the region started threatening Portugal's interests that the settlement was again permanently manned. This didn't prevent the French conquest of Dahomey. After this, São João Baptista de Juda, now reduced to the territory actually within the walls of the fort, lost what remained of its importance. The fort was reoccupied by Portugal in 1865. In this period it served as a base for a brief Portuguese attempt to create a protectorate in the Kingdom of Dahomey, of which the city of Ouidah was part, until its annexation by Dahomey in 1961. São João Baptista de Juda was probably the smallest recognized separate modern political unit, initially around 1 square kilometer and later reduced to only 2 hectares, at which time, according to the census of 1921, it had 5 inhabitants, and, at the moment of the ultimatum by the Dahomey government, it had only 2 inhabitants representing Portuguese sovereignty, who tried to burn it rather than surrendering it. When the fort was captured, they were hastily escorted to the Nigerian border and expelled from the country. Only in 1975, after the Portuguese Estado Novo regime had been overthrown due to the Carnation Revolution at Lisbon, did the annexation of the fort by Dahomey gain official Portuguese recognition. This was followed by the fort's restoration, which was paid for by Portugal. The fort is a small square with towers at the 4 corners. It comprises a church and officers' quarters. The fort of São João Baptista de Juda now houses a museum. Bruce Chatwin's book The Viceroy of Ouidah is a fictional retelling of the life of Francisco Felix de Souza, the Souza family founder in Benin, and of his powerful local descendants, dealing also with the slave trade with Brazil. The novel inspired Werner Herzog's movie Cobra Verde. The population evolution of Ouidah is as follows. Notable landmarks. Other attractions in Ouidah include a restored mansion of Brazilian slavers, the Maison du Brasil Art Gallery, a voodoo python temple, an early 20th century basilica, and the sacred forest of Cape Hasse, dotted with bronze statues. A route des esclaves, by which slaves were taken to the beach, has numerous statues and monuments, including the Door of No Return, a memorial arch. The market center of Ouidah, which was established by scouts more than 20 years ago, trains young people in agricultural skills, thus helping to reverse the exodus towards the cities. Ouidah is the spiritual capital of the Vodun religion, and hosts an annual International Vodun Conference. Other landmarks include Ouidah Cathedral, Basilique de l'Immaculée Conception, Ouidah Museum of History, World Heritage status. This site was added to the UNESCO World Heritage tentative list on the 31st of October 1996 in the cultural category. Notable people: Oscar Olou, footballer.